Hey there. So another week has passed of this bloody war in Ukraine, and I want to give you an update on what's happening. But I want to start by answering a couple of questions that came up over the week. First one is why the content is so infrequent with this channel. And I already answered a little bit this question in the past video, but the crux of it is that I'm not a YouTuber. I don't generate any money. I'm having a successful career in my main line of work. I'm having a wonderful wife. And basically, I'm having, well, a lot of other things to do, including supporting my friends that are in Ukraine and are trying to survive this war to their best effort. And secondly, as I said, I don't really see the reason of giving update to the videos, for example, every day or every second day. Firstly, because there is already a lot of really good channels that are doing it for those people that are interested, and I mentioned some of them in my previous video. And secondly, it gives a twisted perspective on what's the situation in Ukraine, right? When some of the things, for example, that we're going to talk about, like the taking of Severodonetsk, right? People are putting a lot of the weight into that occasion and losing the track of the big picture. So I don't want to devolve into thinking that way and making sure that I do videos based around the correct way of thinking about the situation. But that doesn't mean that a lot of things didn't happen, and let's get over it. So I want to probably talk a little bit more today because I actually have a lot of details that I want to cover. So, the first one is an interesting detail. Some time ago, I've talked where are the main battle groups and main forces of Russia in Ukraine, and there has been finally someone made a map where they showed how many battle groups and what are the tactical battle groups that are in different areas around Ukraine. And it's nice, but again, I make this channel with the idea of simplifying everything to a common denominator, to speak plainly. And I want to basically just kind of explain and show shortly. So the Russian forces are around Kharkiv. We know that it's about 5,000. Oh my God, that's a large drawing pattern. Oh no, yes, let's reset, take this out. So we know that around Kharkiv, that's about 5,000. So it's in this area. Then we know that there is about 7,000 that are being formed as a reserves out here. This 5,000 that came in around Kharkiv, they were mostly they came in here, and then they were kind of also going down this line and down this river, because their main purpose was to protect this and this road, this connection point, where the Russians are moving their logistical supplies and so on. So basically, they just pushed Ukrainians back, and they're not really trying to attack Kharkiv, and so there is not a lot of advance here. So we know that this direction is being protected by about 2,000 people. So, and that's basically the northern part of the region. So we know that there is some couple of thousand protecting here. They are supported by 5,000 that came in from the north and are supporting them from the north. And then there's about 2,000 people defending it here. So that's just basically to give you a perspective in some kind of human numbers, because all in all, it's battle tactical groups, and it doesn't take, obviously, the discussion about, well, how much is in equipment, how filled they're in, and so on. This is rough estimates, but this is what people were showing, and I think it's just simpler for a lot of people to think in a number of people that are being attacked. So, Izum, this was supposed to be the big bad line, big bad group of people. It's actually like more like here. And here we have actually 14,000. So there is about 14,000 people on this area. And remember, they want to push towards this direction. And then on the other side of this grouping, remember, there is a river here. Like, let me just quickly get in. Yes. So you see this line that goes here? So, right, this is the river. So we know that there is about 14,000 that are from this part, and they're pushing towards Severodonetsk. And I told you that there was the other push that was coming kind of this way, but they cannot cross really the river still. So they were trying to kind of support these guys, but also looking for an opportunities to push towards the west. And this part is about 7,000, and that's probably the north of the Donbass is probably the biggest grouping there is. So it's like 21-ish thousand people that are here in the north. Then around Severodonetsk, we have the attacking group, and the attacking group is about 5,000 people. And then the south part, where we saw a lot of the operations going on here, is around 12,000. So you see that these two, there is a big group here, there is a big group here. And then obviously the Severodonetsk offensive, the 5,000 that were there. So that's the outline around the main areas. And just to kind of to finish it off, we know that around kind of after you go from that salient, you go up to here. We know that all of this territory, so somewhere here, it's up to 15,000 here. So but they're dispersed heavily around this area. They're not concentrated. And around Kherson area, which is around here, we have 9,000. Oh, it's the worst 9 ever. So about around 9,000. And that's basically the situation. So you can stop and go look and count yourself how it is. But just to give you a quick overview, where is this and where is it from? But obviously to understand, we need to understand also what's the Ukrainian forces. And obviously a lot of Ukrainian forces are unknown, especially now. Maybe you've noticed in the past week or so a lot less speculation from the information about what's happening in Ukraine has been going around. This is happening because Ukraine finally enforced martial law and on freedom of speech. So they are basically saying it's official channels or bust. So it's very limited information that is coming out of the front lines from the Ukrainian side, and mostly it's the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, which is then it's heavily delayed, and there's a lot of assumptions, and even the analysts are saying that yes, now the information is quite harder to get, and mostly it's some kind of a personal connections or just general information that they see from the intelligence apparatus from different countries. But all in all, we know that Ukraine roughly has about 120 to 140,000 combat-ready troops. And we know that a lot of them are distributed all along the front line, including the non-active zones, like the north of the country, like they're protecting Odessa and so on, because Ukraine has very limited stock of equipment, despite actually their full military right now, the mobilized military, is nearing to 800,000 people. So they have a lot of manpower, but they don't have a lot of equipment. So they have basically the equipment maybe to supply for about a quarter of their current army. At least that is what the estimates are. Those are the numbers that I've heard tossing around by different analysts. And around Lysychansk, I know that Ukrainians are kind of having about 1-to-1 ratio around this area, and around Kharkiv probably as well, maybe just a little bit more. But I know that around this area they have about 1-to-3 ratio, right? So there's about 3-time advantage for the Russians around this main attack part. So I would say that we can expect that maybe Ukraine has a little bit of pushing power here, maybe a little bit of pushing power here, but I'm going to explain why a little bit later. So we can expect that parity is on the other fronts. So I would approximately estimate that the numbers that were given for the Russian side are about as accurate also for the Ukrainian side. Plus, for the Ukrainian side, it is known that they are not completely utilizing their all reserves, and not all of their equipment is being utilized, and this is going to come relevant very soon, is that they are gathering up equipment for the counter push. They are saving up a lot of the equipment, well, maybe not a lot, but at least a significant part of it, to prepare for the counteroffensive and so on. So that's approximately the plan. So the plan of Ukraine has become very clear. But let's dive to the tactical level before we start discussing the situation. So around Kharkiv area, as I explained, there was a push, but there was very little threat to Kharkiv itself. It didn't seem that they want to go back to take the city, and it got confirmed quite fast over the week that the only purpose of that push was to get Ukrainians further from the supply line entry into Ukrainian territory. And this was indeed what was. The push kind of went into here, went to here, and well, there is like some push here, but most of it kind of went in to reinforce the northern part. So that's the Kharkiv area, and there is a lot of shelling for Kharkiv, but I'm going to talk about that in a later part. So around Sloviansk. So Sloviansk, as I said, that's the objective, but these are heavily reinforced areas. We know from the recent days, basically almost yesterday or a day before, there was supposed to be a massive push coming towards this direction. But Ukrainians and some sources say that it was the newly arrived HIMARS that did it. But the command points here, basically like somewhere in this area, got struck by the long-range missiles or some long-range artillery. And that completely stopped the advance. Basically, they needed time to reassemble and rediscover how they want to do it. So right now, we know that there has been like a fighting force prepared to go, but apparently now they're scrambling to get their commanders in line. But we should expect that there will be a push towards Sloviansk. Liman direction, again, this was supporting force for this one. So they're kind of linked, basically. So this part, the number two, I'm going to say number one, number two. So the number two don't really want to advance themselves. They're more of a supporting force for number one. So they're waiting for the number one to start the advance. And that's pretty much where we are around Slaviansk. There's very little threat, but there is a lot of firepower and so on. So the pain region on the tactical level. There has been a lot of the things, but despite all the news headlines are now reading, oh my god, Ukrainians lost the city of Severodonetsk. I'm going to repeat that before, and I'm going to repeat that again. This all doesn't matter. Ukrainian objective of this current stage of the war is to basically tire Russians out, inflict as much damage as possible, delay any kind of advance of the troops until Ukrainians get enough supply from the Western powers. So basically, Ukraine is fighting for time, and they're doing it quite well. They have been delaying this push towards the Severodonetsk for months now. The whole city was supposed to be taken forever ago, right? The fact that it's only now being kind of closed down and there are still some groups in Severodonetsk, and there is a story behind why they're there, with the fact that some open sources or journalists apparently revealed some of the positions of the Ukrainians, or it's been unclear. But we know that there are some pockets of resistance around Severodonetsk that are still yet to cross the river to Lysychansk. But the most important part is when we last talked, there was this nice pocket around here. It was not like this. It was more like this. So there was like a push of Russians that came in to this area. And there was almost an encirclement of this Zolote Hirske, like these two towns or settlements. And that was one important part for me. I'm going to explain why. So the Ukrainians, ever since they fought in 2014, they have this hero image of a Ukrainian military. They like heroic things. They like protecting their land. They don't want to give an inch to the Russians. They want to fight to the end. And basically that often means that in prior times, there were a lot of times where if something just gets encircled, that means that no way we're gonna fall back. We're just gonna fight until the end. Like even what happened at Mariupol as well, that was pretty much in line. And I was very worried because it's a very unhealthy trend for an army, because the purpose of Ukrainian army is to delay the Russians, inflict the damage, make the advancements costly, delay them at every possibility. Losing ground is not an issue. Many wars, I've shown this in a previous video, and also by Jake Bro video that I shared. He explains and shows many wars that happened, even like something as similar as the Second World War, where Hitler basically already went into Russia, took over all of the Europe, and then was driven back. Taking land while the war is on does not constitute that that land will be held. So it's okay. For Ukrainians, it was okay to lose it. And I was hoping that it was the plan, because everything kind of suggested that, yes, this is the scenario that we are playing through now, but let's just see if they can do it. And I was really looking forward to seeing how the situation will play out. So what I was looking for is, A, will there be an encirclement around Zolota and Hirske? And B, will there be then a retreat or a push through, or there will be some other plan? And now I became absolutely clear that Ukrainians know what they're doing, because as I was saying, that their news came in first for me from some of my inside knowledge, that yes, indeed, there has been preparations made for the escape and a retreat from that pocket, even before it was starting to appear. And then, moreover, they actually organized a full retreat from that area, from that defensive area to more northern positions around Lysychansk. And it wasn't without a fight. Apparently there was a fight on their exit, but that was quite a narrow corridor for them to exit, so that was obvious that there will be some kind of fighting. But the point still stands. There was an organized effort made to cede territory, yet preserve the force. And that was a big paradigm shift from the Ukrainian command, because that was one of the weaknesses of the Ukrainians, that I just was not sure that they will do it. And moreover, the morale and the principles of war has been passed down also to some of the ground forces on the ground. A lot of the Ukrainian soldiers treat this almost like a work. So they just go to work, they just need to do their job, follow the commands, and inflict damage. Get some Russians into the Ukrainian soil. So this is pretty good. So we should expect now, and I want any of my viewers to be aware of, there should be a completely no surprise if there will be in coming days a complete retreat from Lysychansk. So Lysychansk might be ceded completely, despite it having really good position. The Russians had a very good success around the south of Lysychansk. And right now there is a very threatening area here. Like Ukraine is a little bit favorable area along this road. There is like a couple of hills on this, how you can say, like on the inside of this road that goes to Lysychansk. There is like a little bit favorable positions for the Ukrainians, but it is still would be extremely dangerous, because there is quite a lot of people around Lysychansk. It might be 10, 15,000 troops for the Ukraine. But that is what I basically wanted to see around the Girsky and Zolota. Ukrainian army was completely in control despite the advancements of the Russians. They actually know what they're doing. They are actually inflicting the damage to the Russians, and if they need to fall back, they fall back. That's why when I said, like, I'm hoping that the Ukrainians have the plan for Lysychansk, and apparently they do. So we should expect, and I want this to be absolutely clear, that the troops will be most probably taken from Lysychansk, unless the advancements will be stopped hard, which I don't really believe that they will. And then we can see that the war will move towards the siege of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. But again, obviously, once the advancement. So I think there's going to be the equaling out of the front line. I would expect something around this part, maybe this part. It's going to depend. Maybe around Solidar, like Solidar is kind of big city, so maybe around Bakhmut. Yeah. So the siege of Bakhmut will be there, and then probably this road will be taking this road. So I would expect that we can see something like this quite soon, right? So we can see that a lot of this main road and highway will be taken over by the Russians when the Ukrainians fall back. And I want to make sure that you all agree with me that this doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. It was just one of the pockets. And then we'll go basically to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, which are a lot bigger cities than whatever Lysychansk or Severodonetsk was. These are two extremely fortified cities. They are big, and there is no major encirclement. And like to encircle them, like you would need a lot of like leeway, and Russian forces are definitely running short. There's a lot of reports that the reinforcements of the Russians are actually stalling. They have the 7 battle groups apparently that were outside in the Russian region, but they're having trouble reinforcing. So basically Russia is running with the forces that it has now, and well, it's unclear where they want to end up, because so far it's been quite bad for them. So what that was kind of long, but let's see what's on the other fronts. So we know that there has been some advancements here, and sorry, let me just quickly. So we know there has been some advancements of the Ukrainian forces around this area, and we know that there has been advancements in the around Kherson area. What was it? Basically, the biggest question that I had in my mind is because I know that there is not a lot of Ukrainian artillery in those areas, and there is not a lot of concentrated equipment along those areas. The question was, what was the possibility for Ukrainians to advance around those directions, and also actually around this direction? Like a couple of villages were taking around this direction as well. So around the south was some advancements, and it actually was like a military opportunity, I guess, that they seize. Ukrainians noted that the Russians don't have a lot of widespread night vision systems. They had night vision systems mostly around their, like, vulnerable targets like command points and so on, but not throughout the front line. So Ukrainians used the cover of the night to basically advance, and through the night advance the battle groups, some of the battle squads, into the enemy line, and then hit them at the same time, both from the sides and from the front, and basically advance like this without giving significant artillery damage before they attack. It was an interesting tactic, but apparently now it's been known, so now I'm not explaining any kind of secret information here. So that is one of the reasons that the advancements have kind of stalled, but we can expect that some kind of additional opportunities will be exploited by the Ukrainians when they arise. But so far, we shouldn't expect that there is going to be any kind of major... Oh, wow. No, that's definitely not what I want. We shouldn't expect there is going to be any kind of major push towards Kherson in the coming days. Ukrainians are preparing their forces for the counteroffensive. Again, despite the shifting date around where that might become and start. And I want to be clear, it's not going to be like a counteroffensive like the Russia when they just invaded Ukraine, where it's like, oh wow, they just take over like half of the country in one day. No. It's going to be basically Russia will stop advancing for a longer time. Right now, Russia is about doing 1-2 days of advance, and then it's about 4, 5, 6 days of recovery, and then again. So there's like, it's doing it in waves. What we'll see is that the waves of attacks of Russians will start increasing in the duration. So it's going to come from like 5-6 days before you can hear that they're taking new villages to maybe a longer period. And then the advancements will probably start coming to an end altogether. And then we're going to start noticing that Ukrainians are starting to go on the offensive. It's probably going to get declared. And then some of the villages here and there will start going towards the Ukrainian side. And then we'll see how the Russians will if they will hold the line or they will have to retreat, or what will be the position for the Russians. But it's not going to be fast. It's going to be a slow crawling counteroffensive by the Ukrainians once they get saturated with the Western-made weapons. So let's talk globally. And the most important global factor right now that's been discussed, I've heard, was the Belarus. Like, will Belarus essentially attack? And the answer to that most likely is no, because there has been quite a fly-in towards in between two leaders of Putin and Lukashenko, and the question whether Belarus should join the war or not. And apparently, they didn't agree yet to attack. It seems that Belarus is going to supply Russia with the stocks of their weapons, because if you remember, like some time ago, I already said that Russia is actually running out of firepower itself. They can sustain this intense fighting on one direction, but they cannot sustain this fighting on multiple attack directions in Ukraine. So it's a very tricky situation for Russia with the supplies, and that's why they were getting the equipment from Belarus towards the Russian army, to which Belarus basically said, then we hopefully will not need to send. So they will still try to imitate that there is some attack potentially will come, but we should not. Hopefully, I'm like, after no one was expecting that Russia will invade Ukraine, but to be honest, everything obviously is possible. But for the most part, I think that at least that I've seen, that the analysts agree that it would make sense. Lukashenko would not really signing his own death sentence, but let's think about it this way. Basically, once the Lukashenko signs these forces will participate in a special military operation with Russia, then just by the fact that they're part of the similar to NATO agreement of the common defense in the between Russia and Belarus, so the forces will start to work under the command of Russian forces. So the military of Belarus technically will be an extension of the military of the Russian Federation. So at that point, Lukashenko is actually more of a hindrance to Putin rather than an asset, because he's not going to be really needed, because he's not going to give any command. He's not going to be responsible for the commands of an army. So that army is going to be essentially following the orders coming from Kremlin. And Lukashenko doesn't want to start being useless, right? He knows that there is a position to be have, despite him being not very likable and dictator, etc., etc. He is very cunning, and he is a very good politician and a good political sense dictator. So I'm pretty sure he's aware of this situation, and that Putin needs his army right now. But if he just gives order to attack, then at that moment, basically he will not be as useful to Putin as, well, he would otherwise be. So that's the one thing. Another thing is that Russians have been reported. I've talked about the area that a lot of times, like around here in Kherson area, there has been a lot of wavering of morale of Russians and mobilized troops for the regions. And that is actually growing in significant proportions. We now see that even the contract army of Russia is actually struggling to keep the morale high up. They are having a really bad time getting people motivated to go into offensive, because they see how tough it is, how much losses it inflicts on the troops. And what was this current offensive and war shown for the Russians and for Putin as well, is they doubling down on the contract, not the contract, but the mercenaries, so such as Wagner Group and so on. So they're offering a lot more money, and they're making their biggest motivation of fighting this war around money. So any kind of ideology is nice to have, but it quickly becomes completely economy driven, this conflict. And Obviously, mercenaries are not cheap, but this is what seems to be the focus of the Russians. So we can expect that a lot more mercenaries will be fighting for the Russian side in the coming future. Not as many, how do you say, volunteers or ideologically motivated people, which is good on one side, but bad on the other. So the problem comes when the Ukrainian counteroffensive will begin, because what will happen is that these kind of people that are motivated by money, at least that's what I've heard, like some of the psychologists talking about this war, is that people while they're motivated by money, they're hoping then to get that money once they return, because they're not ideologically motivated, right? They're not motivated to go kill all the fascists in Ukraine. And if the general feeling around this war, with, for example, Ukrainian counteroffensive, is going to start switching to the fact is like, well, we're actually being on the defensive now, right? When you get the money, basically people want to get on the attack, get easy attack, get artillery, don't put your head out in front of the bullet, and get the money, go back, have a great life. But if there is going to be a successful counteroffensive by the Ukrainians, and the perception of this war will start shifting, because this is not ideological army, the wavering of these troops will become a lot more significant. This is what I've heard. Take it with a grain of salt. I don't know, but it does make sense for me. So that's just something to be aware of. So that's about the extent of where we are. We should expect probably Russians taking Lysychansk in some coming months, weeks, months, maybe. And we can see that the front will advance towards the east. Remember one thing, it still doesn't matter. This Ukrainians are doing well, draining the Russian resources. They're almost out of reserves. The reserves that they're having are having troubles to get working together. It will still take a longer time, and I'm really happy to hear right now from the Western leaders in the past couple of meetings that there is going to be a long-term support for Ukraine in arms and weapons going forward. My next video that I'm going to make beyond the update for Ukraine, I'm probably going to make another one during this coming week, is that I'm going to make a video about what's the benefits of Ukraine joining getting the candidacy status for the EU. This was a request from my Ukrainian friends, and I'm very sorry. I really wanted to make the video about why Russia is a fascist state, but I guess it will have to wait. But because I want to help some of my Ukrainian friends and give them perspective and explain. So that's that. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.